From having forceful intimate acts with noble women in front of their husbands, to forcing parents watch their children executed, to humiliating his own family, Caligula's brutal atrocities have no mercy. But to begin with, he was nowhere as cruel as people thought. When Caligula was a little boy, he was beloved by everyone, especially by his father, Germanicus, who was a famous general. One night, Germanicus died suspiciously and everything changed for little Caligula. His mother and sisters were locked up in prison for treachery with no specific reason. His mother blamed the current emperor Tiberius for poisoning Caligula's dad. Ever since, Caligula stayed under the wing of the Emperor Tiberius. Years later, Tiberius died. Caligula was the new emperor of Rome. At first, he was the most generous emperor Rome ever had, helping his people with everything they needed. But one incident changed everything. He suffered from a severe illness, and when he came back, he was to become the most hated and brutal emperor of all time. He started inviting married noblemen from the royal families to the palace, especially from the family of Tiberius, the past emperor. And yes, not only the women alone, but their husbands and children alongside. At first, it seemed to be for royal meetings and royal dinners, but things escalated for worse when Caligula openly started intimate acts with the married noble women in front of their husbands and children. It was indeed a shameful act for an emperor of the biggest empire in history. But there was a special reason why Caligula did all this. He wanted to prove every royal member and general in the empire that he was the king. He wanted to show his dominance and authority over everyone by humiliating the most sacred thing the noblemen had, their wives. Along with political reasons coupled with the earlier trauma of the killing of his father and prisoning of his mother, Caligula thought such acts of humiliation would help assert dominance in the empire. But his cruelty didn't end there. In fact, it was just the beginning. He started convicting normal people for the smallest of reasons. Let's say you spoke of something about Caligula to your friend. Our emperor is so handsome, but I wish he had a beard. You were gone. Straight to lifetime in prison. No courts, no hearings, no justice. Just an order to be locked up for life. As a soldier guarding the door, you see Caligula defeat his opponent in sword battle. Everyone claps but except you, because your arms were occupied with a spear and a shield. Next time you hear, prison him for a lifetime, he didn't clap for me. This led to a huge number of prisoners in the jails. Even so, that fitting them together was a challenge. To tackle this problem, Caligula came up with a genius yet brutal strategy. He had ordered some wild exotic animals for entertainment, and yes, wild animals do need a lot of food to eat. And yes, you guessed it right. Caligula literally fed the prisoners to his wild pets, and when death wasn't enough to punish you, he tortured you. Tortured like no other emperor in Rome ever did. He would cut off body parts one by one each day. He would invite your family members to watch you suffer from losing organs every day, all without food and water. When this punishment got boring, he would then invite the noblemen from a royal feast and saw his prisoners in half as a form of entertainment for everyone on the table. Well, some didn't find it entertaining and threw up, but things got beyond explanation when his own cousin once decided to visit him. Ptolemy, a client king and relative through marriage, visited Rome wearing a beautifully jeweled cloak. Caligula took this offensively. The idea of a relative appearing too magnificent was intolerable. Shortly after praising the cloak, Caligula ordered Ptolemy killed. The real reason was fear. Ptolemy's popularity in North Africa made him a potential political opponent and a threat to his crown. All this power and arrogance got worse when he started doing the unthinkable. Caligula ordered to behead the statues of gods and replace them with his face. Not only this, but he also built a temple of himself, made statues of his own, appointed priests, where his cult and the priest would pray about him daily. He would even order to kill real men as a gesture of sacrifice to his statue. During public ceremonies, he would dress like the gods Jupiter or Apollo, sit amongst the statues of the same gods, and all the sacrificial killings would be done under his name and not in the name of real gods. All the people, including noblemen and generals, were called worshippers. His demands were getting out of hand when he asked a place of a statue of himself in the Temple of Jerusalem, a sacred place that forbade images of gods or humans. He even ordered to build a direct bridge between his palace and the Temple of Jupiter for easy access. He ordered to make new coins and currency with his own name and face on it. Well, his hatred for gods took a next-level turn when he thought of actually killing a god. He decided to start a war campaign against the Germanic troops in order to show the world his military dominance. Caligula and his army marched toward the Germanic troops, but the Caligula army was so huge, the Germans avoided the fight and ran away. Caligula feared returning to Rome without a triumph and blood of the enemy. A Roman emperor without a military success risked looking weak, and Caligula refused to accept that humiliation. To create a victory of his own making, he led his troops to the northern coast and ordered them to line up facing the waves. With full military discipline, they were commanded to attack the sea itself, thrusting their spears into the water as if fighting an invisible enemy. When the ritual was complete, he instructed the soldiers to collect seashells, declaring them spoils of war, gathered from Neptune's defeated kingdom. Now, some of you may ask, who the hell is Neptune? It's actually the god of the seas. So Caligula wanted his empire to believe that he defeated the god himself to become the god of the gods. Now his arrogance was at an all-time high. And the next thing he did, even crazier than all of his atrocities yet. He literally emptied the entire treasury and bought exotic animals to entertain the crowds at the Colosseum, staged massive festivals that lasted for days, and free feasts that fed tens of thousands of people. He rebuilt parts of the palace in marble, paid for enormous golden statues of himself, and decorated rooms with precious stones and pearls. Ships were redesigned into floating palaces and gardens, baths, and dining halls, used only for pleasure cruises along the coast. He also spent enormous sums on chariot races, games, and banquets that served little political purpose. The scale of entertainment he demanded required constant spending, and every new event had to surpass the previous one. Caligula's treatment of his favorite horse, Incitatus, became one of the clearest displays of his desire to challenge and humiliate Rome's political order. Incitatus was not kept as an ordinary racing horse. He lived like a member of the imperial household. Caligula provided him with a marble statue, an ivory manger, and attendants whose sole responsibility was to care for him. The horse was fed oats mixed with gold flakes, housed in chambers, furnished with purple blankets, and guarded at night to ensure absolute silence. Before races, in less than a year, the once stable treasury was nearly exhausted. When officials warned him of financial strain, Caligula simply replied, "An emperor should not worry about costs." But eventually, even he could no longer ignore the consequences. To refill the drained treasury, Caligula turned to the most accessible source of wealth in the empire: religious institutions. Temples across Rome held offerings accumulated over centuries: gold, plates, jewelry, votive statues, and costly ornaments. Caligula seized them without hesitation. He melted down sacred objects, removed gemstones from holy artifacts, and stole the temple income for his amusement. When temple wealth proved insufficient, Caligula imposed a new wave of taxation. Weddings, inheritances, legal cases, and trade transactions were all taxed heavily. He revived forgotten debts, charged wealthy families with fabricated accusations, and confiscated their estates. Even public offices were sold to the highest bidder, turning administration into a marketplace. Everyday citizens felt the pressure as prices rose and officials demanded bribes to compensate for their own purchased positions. Now things got so worse that Caligula didn't even let his own senate to live in peace. Caligula forced them to run beside his chariot like servants, stand silently for hours in the palace, and participate in staged events where he openly mocked their expressions, clothing, and age. At formal banquets, he seated them according to his own amusement, sometimes placing elderly senators at children's stables or ordering them to perform tasks beneath their rank. The message was direct. Their authority existed only because he permitted it. By the final year of his reign, he had humiliated the Senate, punished noble families, mocked generals so much that they were fed up with his deeds. On the 24th of January, 41 CE, after attending a private performance, Caligula walked through a narrow passage inside the palace. There, a general named Chaerea and several conspirators ambushed him, striking quickly and repeatedly. He collapsed under their blades, ending a reign marked by spectacle, terror, and unchecked authority. Caligula was killed, and atrocious reign had finally ended. His death restored Rome's institutions temporarily, but it also revealed how fragile absolute power had become under his rule. We hope you liked this video. To know more about the Roman Empire and how crazy they were, make sure you watch one of these videos.